Hello everyone, it's Grandpa Ron here again. Looking outside, it's a rainy day, but inside we're nice and dry and warm, and we're going to continue with our basic Bible study. Today we're going to look at Genesis chapter 13, which deals with Abram and Lot, his nephew, and how they separate. Remember in chapter 12, we saw God's calling to Abram. They had a close relationship, and God had faith. Abram had faith in God, and tried to do what God wanted him to do, what God told him to do, and God counted that as righteousness toward him, and made certain promises to him about creating many descendants and giving him certain areas of land. And he told him to pack up and move into an area where he didn't even know where he was going. But Lot was obedient and trusted God, and he headed out. I guess I should mention too that interlude where there was a famine, and Lot, on his own initiative, apparently without consulting God, went to Egypt to escape the famine. And he and his wife Sarai, they made a deal where she would claim that she was his sister, so that they wouldn't mistreat Abram and even kill him in order to take his wife. And we saw how that worked out, and it wasn't to the glory of Lot or God, but it actually upset the Pharaoh. They booted him out after giving him a lot of stuff and consideration, and they wanted to get rid of him because of the problems that they had caused. So now let's see what's going to happen here. Chapter 13, verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. Remember, when he first got to Egypt, he already had quite a bit of stuff, but the Pharaoh gave him even more. Believing that Sarai was his sister, the Pharaoh took her into his harem. But all kinds of diseases and plagues befell Pharaoh and his family and country, and somehow he found out about the lie. Sarah might have confessed and told him, but they had given Lot and Abram a lot of stuff, and so by the time they left, Abram was very rich. Verse 3. And he went on his journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. A little inference here that Abram turned back to the Lord, that he had kind of maybe wandered away a little bit. Relationship wasn't as close as it should be, but here he reaffirms his trust and faith in the Lord. Verse 5. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, and the land could not sustain them while dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. Now the Canaanite and the Perizzite were dwelling then in the land. Well, not only were Lot and Abram's herdsmen in a little conflict. Remember, these great herds took a lot of land to graze, and they were kind of butting heads over grazing lands, and I'm sure the families were growing and growing. The number of people that were with them, workers and even slaves, were growing and growing. But they were also in a land where the Canaanite and Perizzite lived, so they also had territories and lands within this area. So it got to a point where something needed to be done to resolve some of these conflicts. Verse 8, Then Abram said to Lot, Please let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. Well, actually, Lot was his nephew, but he's talking about brothers in the sense of family and being together. You know, they were relatives. Verse 9, Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me to the left, or if to the left, then I will go to the right, or if to the right, then I will go to the left. Abram was very magnanimous here, even though he probably had the larger of the herds and possessions, but he gave Lot the choice because Abram trusted God. God had made promises to him about multiplying his descendants and giving him land and territory and taking care of him. And so he wasn't concerned about having the first choice. He knew God would take care of him. So he generously gave Lot the first choice. Verse 10, And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. So this land was really beautiful. It was before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah that we're going to learn about later. But the verse itself has some pretty serious portents about what's going to happen and what kind of people were already living there. So Lot chose for himself. That word is key. For himself. He wasn't looking for the Lord's will. He was looking for what was going to benefit him the most. Just like we learned about the Tower of Babel, the people wanted to build for themselves a tower, irregardless of what God wanted. Back to verse 11. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever. So he's reiterating this promise, reaffirming this promise that he had already made to Abram. And he continues in verse 16. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Well, you couldn't number the particles of dust. That'd be impossible. So what God is saying, it's going to be impossible. There's going to be so many descendants, it's going to be impossible to count them. Just trying to emphasize how great his lineage and the number of descendants will be. Verse 17, Arise, walk about the land through its length and width, for I will give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord, another altar to the Lord. So Abram is going to move from place to place. He's going to continue to worship God. He's going to continue to grow his herds, and but as far as occupying the land, we're going to learn as we go through these verses that he never fully occupied the land in his lifetime. that's actually only going to be filled way in the distant future, our future. It hasn't really happened yet. His descendants have occupied portions of the land God promised, but by no means all of it. But that is going to happen in the distant future. Distant future from Him. May not be so distant from us. It may be sooner than we think. But anyway, we'll stop there today, and next time we're going to look at chapter 14, where Lot gets in a jam and Abram has to bail him out. Anyway, I hope God blesses our look at the scripture, and it will be meaningful to you. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great week. God bless. Bye-bye.